Virtual violence.
Video games.
Violent video games.
Violence on video games.
Violent games.
Violent video games.
Like these games.
Violent video games.
Violent video games.
Violent video games.
Violent video games.
Video games contribute to violence in real life.
Violence.
Criminal simulator, murder to make killing a conditioned response.
Violence in both Buffalo and Uvalde. A new poll shows many Americans think
women
they
here.
do.
What it really comes down to is that, once again,
playing video games, a joyful activity done by most teenagers and adults during their free time. An activity I, myself, have also enjoyed over the years, but there seems to be a constant concerning surrounding video games, and it always gets brought up when particular video games are released, and that is video game violence.
Of the deadly violence in both Buffalo and Uvalde, a new poll shows many Americans think they do.
For kids.
The evidence is clear that playing first-person shooter violent video games over a long period of time increases the likelihood that a child will behave aggressively.
Data is persistent and clear across many different forms. You cannot deny it. It is overwhelming.
What is it called? Art of War, Man of War? What do the kids play?
Call of Duty.
We don't allow that in our house. Really? So busy buying Call of Duty. There needs to be more hugs in households.
It is believed that video games are the main cause of violent behavior amongst teenagers. This is an ongoing topic that never seems to get old. Why is that? Well, that's what we are trying to find out.
Are they violent is a interesting question, because there are games with a lot of violence within them, but those types of violence is usually relegated to games that do the violence so over the top that it, rather than it being serious, it rather looks goofy instead. And so the video games themselves aren't violent. It's maybe the people who play them that become violent, maybe not due to video games, but are taking the idea of that and applying it to their anger in real life.
No, this is a big question. I think it needs a lot of research, of course, and you are definitely not the first one who's asking this question. And I encountered lots of other researchers when doing my studies, also in the university. Well, to my knowledge, from what I saw, I can't accept that, because there are violence represented in every medium. Why video games is supposed to be an exception? I know it's interactive, but if different types of media is supposed to cause aggressive reactions or violence, then Tarantino movies would create many serial killers. That's what I think. So as a cinema student, I think there are also lots of representations of violence in cinema, but it won't make anyone violent. In the end, you are the person who's acting on his life. So I think when people try to blame video games for violence, they are trying to find a scapegoat to maybe distract the people from what is the real issue when these problems happen.
When it comes to violence, I don't think necessarily it differs from every person, but video games is like, you could treat it as like a movie enthusiast. They like to watch movies, and if people create violence, you could say, movies would also do the same thing. It doesn't have to mean video games.
What didn't help video games at the time was this infamous incident that took place in the United States, the Columbine High School shooting.
The investigation into the high school massacre is slow-moving and dangerous. The two gunmen who went on the rampage booby-trapped the building and even themselves. All day long, investigators have searched the homes of both teenage killers. In one of them, police say they found bomb-making materials. Specially trained officers searching the school today found close to 30 explosive devices all around the building. Authorities have also revised the death toll, now saying 15 people were killed, including the two gunmen. Most of the bodies are still inside the school, but families of the murder victims have been notified.
Two teenagers went one day to their high school and killed 13 of their fellow students, an incident that left many students traumatized for life. A truly horrifying incident. This incident always gets brought up when talking about video game violence. Many who are against video games used this incident as a reference point, saying the shooting happened because of violent video games. Why? Well, because the teenagers played a certain type of violent video game. But does this mean they were influenced by the video game to commit these horrible crimes?
So I told you about the Columbine shootings. Have you heard about it before, or is it the first time?
Yeah, I didn't know the details about it, but you enlightened me before, so now I know about the shootings. And as I said, I think the reason people tried to blame video games was just to find a scapegoat, something that is outside, and try to blame that because, you know, also in the American society and every society in general in our global world, because we are nowadays connected and we are forming one huge society in a sense. There are differences in cultures and everything, but I think the real issue deeps lie within the society and body of society itself. And it's not an external entity or form of media like video games that are causing it. I think it has nothing to do with the video games. I'm not a fan of them. I mean, of course, I had no experience playing them, but I saw, for example, my niece, other kids playing with them, and I think it actually is a good stimulate for them because they enjoy it, and always when I see them, they're happy and they're in their world and just playing video games. I don't see any harm in it. Why would they be a stimulation of violence? The violence comes from the problems with the economy and how the society is structured and our hierarchies in society and many different reasons. Also, I'm very curious, and I've always been curious about sociology and economy, and I'm also a follower of Marxist thoughts to some extent. So I had some readings, and to my knowledge, we have many problems we are facing today, such as global warming. We are facing neoliberal policies that are crushing the proletarians. So I think the issue deeps lie within these, and the governments and the people in control of the mainstream media in general want to distract the people from the real issues and just blame the video games. Yeah, it's the problem is from the video games. They're making kids violent, but that's not it. They are much more complex and should be analyzed. That's why we are going this way.
So I've heard about that, and yes, during that case, there was a lot of media on the video games being the cause of said violence. But because even in those, if depending on the games they've played and the game that they were putting at the highlight, those games particularly causing violence to others or to the NPCs or non-player characters are against the rules even in the game. So to say that it's the video game that caused them to do so is a bit of a stretch, considering that is one of many different types of video games. There is so many different types of video games with many different types of play styles or gameplay mechanics. To put it solely on video games, or to put it solely on one video game, which even in that video game, depending on which one it is, causing violence to the non-player characters is against the rules. An example would be GTA. When you attack an NPC, the cops will come after you afterwards, and it's very difficult to get rid of them after once you're being chased by the cops. So I don't think it's the video games per se that caused that. There might be other factors into it that cause them to act out in violence.
Regarding that case, it's really a situation that I would say is like a stretch, or you could say that people were reaching way too far. The kids it couldn't have only been video games, because just assigning video games as the main culprit, it seems it's almost next to impossible, because not only video games portray violence, there are movies, there are books, there are things on the internet. The internet is literally a limitless spot. So they could have seen that. There's, if you didn't know, the dark web. Anyone has access to it. So just connecting violence committed and then matching that violence with a video game where the video game is literally like as unrealistic as it can get. rather than, like, let's say a movie or a book where they describe things in detail or show the plan outs. And like, basically, if you were to read that book or to watch that movie or to see that video on the internet, you would think this is possible. This is like a movie where, like, oh, you go hunting creatures, you stab like some alien void stuff, and then just saying, oh, you know what, that game is violent. They kill a bunch of people in school. That means that it's connected somehow, right? No, it seems to me it's like they're reaching out to shut down a genre of entertainment for no reason at all. It's just, this is how entertainment is. Entertainment comes in different genres. People can enjoy specific genres or can enjoy multitudes of them, and it'll be fine. And all of these genres could contain violence, but somehow gaming was caught in the crossfire, and gaming was at fault, and now gaming has to shut down because a school shooting happened, and it was the only thing that the media decided to connect it to the school shootings, which again seems out of reach. It's like you're grasping for something that is basically not there.
Should we believe that video games are the main cause of violent behavior? Or is there something else, other factors that play a role in causing violent behaviors?
So, if not video games, then what is the real issue? As I also mentioned, but I will elaborate a little bit further on my points. We have economical problems, especially in the youth, that are turning into a huge crisis now, because the prices of housings are going out outrageously. And we recently had the crisis of COVID, and there has been a market crash, obviously, and we are in a form of huge inflation globally. The global market is in inflation, and also these policies, as I mentioned, neoliberal policies, and this pressure on the proletarians and our general society started back in the 80s in a sense, and they've been leading up to even more mental challenges even. For example, we are seeing a surge of, from what I heard and from what researchers I read, we are seeing a surge of ADHD, and this is an external problem because it's not genetics. Doctors try to blame it on genetics, but I think we are seeing different dislocation, disjointments. We are seeing lots of OCD in people that is caused by external stress that are being imposed on the society. And I think these stress lead to violence because we have to put a lid on it. We are pressed by the society and economy, and you don't have any way to put it out. And that's when the violence is created. Violence is like energies that are repressed in people, that the source is in many cases external. Society, maybe even family. For example, the reason we are seeing families that are crumbling down is part of also the economic reasons. Other parts might be sociological problems that needs a lot of research. But in general, that's what I'm saying. I think the reason for this violence are external and completely related to our governments, economy, and society in general.